Welcome back. All right, so a topic that I've not discussed in a while. I reviewed a movie, Short and Male, July 1st of 2017. So way back, 8 years ago. Things have really changed since then, but I'm still short. That doesn't change. In fact, as you get older, it feels like everything breaks down and you're kind of shrinking. But at any rate, it has been a topic of discussion, and I figured I'll do a video today where I discuss this. Now, working from home and having YouTube as my job at this point in time means that me being on the shorter side does not impact me on the daily like it used to. But there are still instances where it definitely does cause me issues, and it has over the years. Now, the one area that I feel like it's caused me the most issues would be in sports. Last one picked for sports teams, often, yes. Especially if it's a group of people who don't really know me very well. So if it was at summer camp and it's the start of the week, I know I'm going to be picked last. And whether it's soccer or whatever it was. And then I go out and I play pretty well. And then the next time we're drafting teams, I'm not picked last anymore. But it has definitely been a thing where at times I feel like, okay, so that guy's, being treated that way because they're taller than I am. So I have to work harder. And it's something that has been ingrained in me for a long time. I'm going to have to work harder than a guy who's 6 feet tall because there's a certain level of respect they get for being tall that I'm not going to get because I'm not. And it is something that happens with men. It is absolutely a thing. It's something I've dealt with throughout my life. And it's something that has been frustrating because it's something I do not have control over. It's something that I never had any level of it's genetics. And in fact, me being taller than other people in my family says I kind of lucked out a little bit there. Now, dating, it definitely had an impact in that any woman who was taller than me, I knew she wasn't going to go out with me. I tried. I did. I tried to overcome that stigma when I was in middle school and high school. I didn't care if a girl was taller than me, if she was my same height. It didn't matter to me. I would still ask somebody to dinner. I would still want to hang out with them. And they might be friends with me, but anything more, it'd be weird because you're shorter than in terms of girls I've gone out with, I've had one instance where a girl was taller than me and it didn't have any kind of negative impact on it. It was weird. It was like we just liked each other and hung out, and it didn't matter that I was shorter than she was. But there's definitely been occasions. There was one that I liked her. She seemed to like me. We got along really well, and I said, well, we could, I could take you out to dinner. We could go out and just talk. And her response was, well, I don't know how you would protect me. And I'm pretty sure I stopped myself from saying, from what? Bears, coyotes? What do you get up to? What do you need protection from? But it is ingrained that this idea that, to be a true protector, the man has to be bigger. I talk a lot about the dating shows. These guys on dating shows aren't short. They're just not. None of them, because that's not the ideal. So I already have that working against me, both if it's a sporting event or I always had that working against me when it came to the dating side of things. And at work, forget about it. I know I talked about this in the video 8 years ago, but there's probably going to be a lot of people watching this didn't watch the video 8 years ago. I got to my workplace back in it was 2008 when I started working there. My last full-time job before I became a YouTuber. And it was very physical. It was very, very labor-intensive. And so I went in with, I think there were 6 people that all got hired at the same time I did. And I was the last one that got picked. I, by default, ended up on the last line, which was the pork line, which actually ended up working pretty well. That actually ended up being my favorite line to work on. So, happily. But I was kind of the consolation prize. And I remember saying to my supervisor, well, nobody picked me, even though I have 7 years of experience in an environment like this. So, all right. And that was the thing. The other kids that were being brought in had no experience in that environment, but they were tall. I had 7 years of experience working on a line like that, and nobody wanted me. No. And within, I think it was 2 months after that, almost everybody I was hired with had quit. In fact, that was kind of the standard. They would hire 8 or 9 people, and you were lucky to keep one past 2 weeks. It was just a lot of the time it was people who were on unemployment or on welfare, and so they'd get the job and then they'd quit again. So they could be like, okay, now I get to keep my benefits, and I don't want to do that job because it sucks. I would have people saying, "Is it always like this?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's always. Sometimes it's worse." Because I don't lie either. Which my wife and I talk about, and she's like, "You might want to lie sometimes, but I don't have the time." But at workplaces I've had, that's been the standard. I remember when I worked in poultry, I would work in the shipping area, and I remember my boss saying, "You can't work back here. You can't throw." There was like these boxes you had to throw on the top shelf, which was, I don't know, 15 feet up or whatever it was. And I was like, I can do that. There's a little bit of a ladder there. It's not like I, did like a jump. I didn't, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar it or anything. But I did it, and I showed I could do it, to the point where then I was the one doing it rather than the guys who were over 6 feet tall. Because I showed I could do it. I showed I could keep up. What started out as a joke, well, why would it have been a joke? It wasn't a joke when they showed anybody else to do it. But when it was this guy doing it, it was a joke. It was like, we're going to try to get him to do it. And I remember one of my friends saying, yeah, the supervisor's going to get you to do that job. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm short, but I'll try. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of a joke. He's saying you're going to last like 15 minutes. So anytime that somebody says I'm not going to make it doing a job, I do. Which is kind of a blessing and a curse, because it's like, yay, I did that. Boo, I just showed I can do that. So I would realize that's the hardest job, and I just showed I could do it. Crap. Damn it. Why did I do that? But it's because I very much have spent a lot of my life trying to prove, hey, I'm just shorter. I'm not weaker. I remember in middle school, there were times where friends of mine would be all like, oh, look at you, and they'd be patting me on the head. I'm like, dude, don't. And they're like, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, all right. So I'd have to kind of prove myself in a play fighting environment, but show that being shorter doesn't necessarily mean in a physical confrontation that you're just going to get beat up. Yes, that can be the case, but not necessarily. So the trying to prove myself has always been a thing. And it might come off with some of the video stuff I've done too when I got into YouTube, where I feel I always have that idea that I have to prove myself. I have to prove myself. Because there's always been all the doubt that I've had related to my physical stature, and so some of that probably bleeds over into how I approach YouTube, and part of the reason why I make as much content as I do, and why I am as open as I am as well. Because I know there's a lot of people who go through the same thing. Like when I talk about going through depression, I talk about that because I know a lot of people go through it. And so for me to talk about it, to me, it's not a big deal. It's just part of my life experience, and it's something that I struggle with and I've dealt with throughout my life. And so if me talking about it makes it easier for somebody else, so be it. But this to me is kind of the same thing, where if me talking about it helps somebody else who's my height or shorter feel okay about it, feel like, all right, well, then that's good. He got through it, and he's, look where he's at now. Yeah. And hopefully that continues to be the thing. I remember in acting class in school, there were certain roles I obviously couldn't have. If a character was a bully, it wasn't going to work for me. I was too small, too short of stature. But that was a little different. That part I kind of understood, where it was, this is a character and this is what they're looking for, so all right. And so I could play the meek character. I could play the character who was maybe rational and dealing with that bullyish, the villainish character. And so I worked on it that way. And I remember thinking at the time about guys like Tom Cruise, Michael J. Fox, and I would have that in my mind, even as a teenager, like, okay, there's other people that are around my height that are still actors. So I can do this acting in high school. If they can do that, I can do this. Because it did occur to me at times where I would think, all right, so I'm paired in this romantic scene with this person because they're not taller than I am. They wouldn't pair me with that person, right? Because that would look weird. And yeah, it's just, and then in public, one thing that I've noticed, and I understand, I get it, is that, and I've gone through this anytime we've gone to a Disney property. I expect the next time we go to a Disney property, I'll deal with this again. If there's a crowd of people, people will tend to go towards the shorter part of the crowd. At least it sure seems that way, to get through the crowd. So I'd better be ready to step aside, because the 6'5" gentleman who's rather solidly built is not going to be told to step aside, but I probably will be, and it's something I have to be ready for. And then there's the issue too, that because my wife and I are both roughly the same height, that in a crowded situation like that, it's very easy for us to lose one another. So that's something I have to keep in mind as well. And so it's always sort of in the back of my mind. It's definitely not as prominent as it was, say, 8 years ago when I made the video talking about, being a shorter man. But it is still a thing. It is still a thing where people will make comments and things are different because of my stature. But I've been proving people wrong my whole life. I will continue to prove people wrong. It has never been a negative for me when it comes to my work ethic in anything. And for women who've dated me, it's worked pretty well at the time. There hasn't been any issues where I'd better get a step ladder. Like I just it hasn't been an issue, really. But it is definitely something that I'm aware of. It's definitely something that I know is going to cause people to take me a little bit less seriously in certain situations. And that's fine. If people are going to disregard someone's opinion because of their physical stature, I don't know how to answer that, because to me, physical stature has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with ability. Like, it's not there. To me, it's just not there. So, at any rate, there you go. Just sort of an updated look, much shorter than the last time I did the review of Short and Male, but I was talking about a movie then. And in this case, I'm just discussing my shortness with a crowd of people watching on the internet. So if you are on the shorter side and you're a dude, don't worry. Things can work out. I found somebody and I settled down and got married in my 40s. So according to the demographics on the channel, that may not make you all that happy. But at any rate, yeah, it did take me a while, but I got there. And there were definitely a lot of cases along the way where, yeah, maybe I could have got further if I'd been taller. There are definitely women I could have dated if I'd been taller. But the other opinion I've always had on that is, if somebody's going to judge me for my height, which is something I have no control over, then that's probably not somebody I'd be concerned with, being friends with. It's probably not somebody I would want to date anyways. So it's probably for the better. And that's kind of been in the back of my mind with that as well. And it's fun when you prove people wrong. I think one of my favorite things was that job where nobody picked me for their lines. When I got assigned to their line to do the job they didn't want me for because the tall guy was the one they picked, I mentioned it a few times of, yeah, you guys could have had me down here a few weeks ago, but where's that guy that you took instead of me? Yeah, he's not here anymore. All right, cool. All right, but we'll do this. And then I did the job and I did it right. So it's one thing that I've always been very motivated. I haven't been out of work since 1992 or 93. It's the last time that I was out of work. If I went from one job to another, it's because I had that first job and I would go to the other one. And each time I switched jobs, it was an opportunity to make more money and or get a better opportunity. And that's right up until YouTube. I didn't even want to quit the brick and mortar part-time job I had, because I was very much of the opinion of I don't know about trusting YouTube for my full-time employment. But doing so was something that my wife talked me into, and honestly, it was the best decision that I ever had somebody else help me make. That's 7 years now that's happened, and it's been great. So it took some time. Like I said, life got good for me in my 40s. So I wish I had some grand wonderful story of everything got really good when I was 22, 23. Nah, life was not necessarily all that great. I did my best with what I was given, But yeah, things have been excellent lately. So there's that. And I would like to thank subscribers and viewers who have helped things to become much, much better lately. And thank you guys for those who come out to meetups and everything. And I think it's great when I look around at street hockey games that I have and I realize how many other guys there are short, maybe not in the best of shape, probably not athletic. Probably the last guys picked for sports when they played in school, and I think good. These are the kind of people that probably don't get to play sports a lot, and or when they played it, they've been mocked or whatever, and I'm glad these are the people who are coming out to play with me. That works. So I do my best to make sure that people don't feel like they don't belong because they're not quite as physically gifted as others. Um, we get enough of that in general. And when I play street hockey, I just want to have fun. So there's that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. It's greatly appreciated. For everybody who's helped with the hockey channel's growth, with this channel's growth as well, as this channel continues to be the little channel that could. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. I was going to wear the Arizona Diamondbacks hat. It's around here somewhere. I do need to organize things a little better. But anyways, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.